Can you believe all this summer heat and storms?
As if I needed another reason to stay inside and play games.
Put the Switch down, we have some things to discuss.
Like how great Hunting Simulator is?
More like new releases, the growing community, Nintendo stock, and I think another free-to-play powerhouse entering the Switch arena. We even have an interview with Hardy Pace from PlayAsia.com.
All of that and more in this month's episode of On the Shelf.
I think they might know by now who we are. Do you really think we need to tell them again?
I feel bad telling them who you are in the first place.
Yeah, I'm the one they need to be concerned with. Let's just get on with it then. Just one correction, more of a slip-up that I didn't catch in time. When I mentioned the date for Kingdom New Lands going on sale last time by limited run, I accidentally said July instead of June. My bad.
Okay, so we can jump into some good stuff, newsy type things. I managed to get my my grubby little meat hooks on a Bayonetta non-stop Climax edition for a decent price, thanks to the community. So that was a fun pickup for me.
$300.
Yep, hard-earned cash bucks. But no, it was pretty close to retail. All I have to do with shipping. It was mostly cost and then shipping on top of that, but I got a really good deal.
Wait, let me guess. You got everything in the package except the cartridges.
Totally. But it doesn't matter. I'm just going to break them down and I'm going to keep Bayonetta 1 and give everything else away anyway.
Right. Did you play it yet?
It's not even open yet. It's I don't know that I'm going to open them because I already have the US versions. I kind of just wanted it just to look at it, see it on my shelf.
On the shelf.
Classic. Yeah, you see what I did there.
I did. Limited Run has started shipping Switch games. Imagine that.
Yeah, Thimbleweed Park has arrived. Yeah,
and Oceanhorn. After that, we should be seeing both Flint Hook and Mercenary Kings here pretty soon too.
Yeah. Oceanhorn. I should have Oceanhorn probably at the time of this recording, probably tomorrow or the next day.
Well before this actually airs.
Yep.
What do you think about them shipping out the collector's editions a little bit later than the standard editions? I know that this was due to some of the pack-ins still lagging behind, but perhaps they won't have as much of an issue with that going forward?
I mean, I can understand it. People were, especially with limited run, people were a little bit exhausted with the fact that they had so much money tied up in media that they weren't getting yet. So they probably just wanted to get stuff out the door as quick as possible so that people could start getting their games in hand, kind of calm the masses a little bit. And then on top of that, it also makes shipping, it kind of stages the shipping, staggers it a little bit. So they don't have as much work to do when it comes to shipping the collector's editions after the fact, because they're not scrambling to get everything out at once because they've already sent out the standard packs.
That's true. Something I thought was pretty promising was seeing the tweet from Josh with all the Steelbook proofs coming in already. That included Kingdom New Lands, Slime Son, Pixel Junk Monsters 2, Night Trap. Those
Thumper.
are a little bit further out. Yeah.
Thumper's coming good.
Thumper's coming soon. So, but the others are just a little further out. I'm sure it takes quite a bit for them to source all the various items for the different pack-ins too.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure.
So on top of all that, I've mentioned it before. I'm not much of a collector's edition type person. I have picked up a few, but I'm not a big follower of those. But I have to tell you, I give big props to what those guys over there are doing with their collector's editions. Some of the planned add-ins are really nice. Yeah,
they're insane. The Steelbooks look phenomenal just to begin with, but all the extra stuff that they're throwing in with it, it's all looking really good. I'm interested to see when they get around to announcing, assuming they announce that they're going to be doing Saturday Morning RPG 2. I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to do that because I want to see Pogs. I'm going to mention Pogs every chance I get. I want to see Pogs.
I could almost see with Josh just kind of thinking about what he might throw in there. He probably would do some. It's not like they'd be tough to produce.
No, and I think they would fit. They'd fit right in too with the whole nostalgia feel.
Something like that, yeah. And it sounded like during our our discussions with him during the interview that we had, that they were going to go a little bit further out in time, maybe start hitting kind of that 90s feel. Starts to fit the theme.
Yeah, those the early to mid 90s when Pogs got huge. That'd be great. But moving on with all the other limited print companies, we're seeing Super Rare Games 3, Shelter Generations is shipping out right now, and PlayAsia.com is shipping out their game as well.
Dimension Drive.
Yeah, it's going to be. We're going to start seeing these coming in. It's feeling. I've got shipping confirmation for both of them. I imagine they will also arrive. PlayAsia.com's Dimension Drive may not arrive this week, but I feel like Shelter Generations might.
I think both of them will hit before this gets to air. So that's
for
probably,
sure.
Looking at where we're at, that's probably true. I'd say it's great to see the progress on these releases. Now, another thing as far as timing, Super Rare Games is going to have an announcement on the 17th that I'm looking forward to. That will have already happened by the time this aired as well. So we'll have to retroactively look backwards at that a little bit later. I know they had a bit of a hiccup as well in getting this third release out and getting the announcement for the fourth one ready. But after some side conversations with George, I'm pretty confident that they'll be steady from here forward.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll be discussing Vroom in the Night Sky next podcast.
Yeah, I don't think so. Now with PlayAsia.com shipping for East Asia Soft's Dimension Drive, that happened, I think, relatively quickly. I think it makes me happy to see that it's going to be in hand relatively soon after purchase, because it really wasn't that long ago that went up comparatively. If you look at the time between order and receipt on one of those types of titles, usually if we look at how long it takes, let's say Super Rare or Limited Run to get those out, they take a little bit longer. Now, the other thing that I was thinking about is the free shipping. It's real icing on the cake for me, and that's kind of rare. We're not seeing that anywhere else. That price point is real nice.
Yeah, I'm digging the $24.99 standard, $34.99 special editions with the free shipping. I can really get behind that. That's going to make a lot of people really happy with it, because it's more or less it is Switch tax free. That's what it kind of feels like. And a lot of people are getting burnt out on the whole Switch tax thing, especially when you have multiple releases coming out for different systems. And Dimension Drive, I believe, came out on the PS4 also. So seeing the price point on the Switch being $24.99 for the standard edition was really nice. And then, like you said, icing on the cake was the free shipping. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not a huge shmup fan. I'll go ahead and put that out there. Like there's some that I like, and the ones I like I really, really like. But the Switch is just perfect for them. Like there's no way I can get around that. As I'm looking at it, the Switch is a perfect system for shmups. It just the mobile screen. I mean, I feel like shmups really showcase well on a mobile device, which the Switch is a hybrid, so I think it works out great. So I'm really digging what they're doing right now, because I know that they've got Dimension Drive and another shmup, and then a third shmup also, and then they'll start mixing things up. But it's looking good.
Yeah, that third one is Shikondo. We actually haven't seen the second one up for order yet. We actually have a chance to talk this month with Hardy Pace. We spent some time with him to talk about PlayAsia.com, and here's what he had to say. Today we've got a very special guest joining us, Hardy Pace from PlayAsia. Hardy, thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be here, guys.
Now, I'm sure most of our audience is aware, but just in case, tell us about PlayAsia and their mission.
Well, PlayAsia is first and foremost a video game import company. We've been around for over 15 years now. Starting off as our main focus was Japanese import, and the physical games that Japan brings us. The progression of PlayAsia and the mission of PlayAsia has always been the ability for video gamers, regardless of their location, their region, so on. They should have access to video games or that they want to play. And that's pretty much the mission statement in a lot of ways of PlayAsia, is that these gamers should have the ability to play these games. Like, there's really very few excuses why they shouldn't have a game available to them, whether that's a game that's only released in Japan and they want to import it, or a variety of other reasons, including censorship and so on. We just think that it's super important to make sure that video gamers have all this access.
What is your role with them, and how did you get started?
Currently, right now, I kind of have a mixed bag of a role. I do a little bit of community management, a little bit of the marketing. My main role, though, is the heading of the Play Exclusives line right now. That entails working very closely with East Asia Soft to coordinate our releases, to handle the distribution for those releases, and to generally make sure that high quality product is produced, and on our end, the distribution is as seamless as possible.
When you started off with them, was your role different? Were you doing something different with them?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes. East Asia Soft, obviously, I think when we did the limited release of Soldner X2, it was kind of an experimental thing, of course, but we had great reception, especially from the Vita community at the time. It just kind of inspired us to keep going, right? As long as people were enjoying the games and wanted the games that we were putting out, it just made sense to keep doing that. And obviously, I think any video game company being able to produce video games, especially like high quality physical games, is kind of like a dream come true, right? Because like we can sell the games, but if we can have a bigger hand in that process, it's just it's much more fulfilling for us. It's just it's better overall if we can really focus on what people want and make that a reality.
So a big part of what attracts our listeners, or a lot of our listeners, to PlayAsia is that relationship with East Asia Soft, and just recently we began to see Switch exclusives from East Asia Soft and PlayAsia, which is great. How exciting is it to be coming over to the hottest device right now?
It's amazing, actually. I mean, the run up to it, you kind of have you get all your data together, and you look at sales data, digital sales data, physical game sales data. Because I mean, we have the benefit of being PlayAsia, so we can look at all the games that we're selling, right? We can look at all the platforms that are moving, and we know which games are popular and on which platform they're popular. So it was just the lead up to announcing games and signing games for the Switch and so on. Like, this is just very exciting because we know that a lot of people right now want Switch games, right? I think we're not necessarily in a bit of a Switch drought or anything like that right now, but releases are a little bit slower than probably most of us would like. It's great to like meaningfully add to this library, especially in such a crucial stage of the console's lifespan.
I agree. And at the time of this interview, we already know about Dimension Drive, which recently shipped and will likely be in everyone's hands by the time they hear this. But during that open order period, there was a strategy change for the amount of cartridges to be produced. I think originally the standard copy of the game was going to be listed as an open pre-order. And can you kind of help our listeners understand the shift in that approach?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the situation with Dimension Drive was honestly pretty straightforward. We'd set out to print 5,000 units from the start and opted to test open pre-orders, with the opportunity to add quantity, because we didn't want to immediately put a limit on the amount of people, who had the opportunity to enter our Switch collection. We had quite a few people messaging us and saying, please leave orders a little bit longer, I really want to buy this game and so on. And at the end of the day, we had unallocated copies that existed, and we aren't really into this to create rare games, but really our goal is to allow gamers to own physical copies of the games that are in demand.
The limited print market is an ever-growing space. And what struck most people with your step into the Switch world was that the game was cheaper than most retail releases, and you offered free shipping. Will this continue to be the trend, or was this just part of your explosion onto the scene?
So the $24.99 standard edition and the $34.99 sort of limited edition model is something that we are going to be viewing as a goal moving forward for most of our releases. That's kind of, say we view it as our baseline, right? There are for sure going to be releases that go above this and that's essentially because they have to. Either the game is sold digitally at one price, so we can't really go much. We have to at least match that. We can't really go lower than that, especially when you look at it from the developer's perspective or the license holder's perspective. It will be the trend. Yeah, so we'll continue with that trend for the foreseeable future, especially the free shipping that will stay around for all the releases going forward. If it's viable, the price will be $34.99 for limited edition, $24.99 for the standard, and slightly higher with certain releases that it makes sense to do because of the royalty costs and so on like this.
Do you guys have a certain number of releases that you hope to maintain, or even a total number that you hope to release by the end of the Switch cycle?
We're not really thinking about it as a total number. I think we just want to keep up a steady flow of good games. That's more of our objective than kind of like an end number or anything like that. Our release schedule is probably going to be looking at like maybe on average one a month. I don't know if we'll always meet that target, but I think on average, well, that's probably what we're looking at for Switch games.
So obviously the titles themselves are a closely guarded secret, but can you tell our listeners roughly how many titles you already have signed for publishing at this point?
I can't say the full amount just because I know that East Asia Soft will probably come after me.
Understood.
but we have in 2018, I think we'll probably have around 3 to 4 more games coming out. That's not a concrete number or anything like that, but
sure.
That's around about what we should be looking at.
But that's a positive thing for us to hear, is that you guys already have a lot working, to come this direction. So
we'll mark it down as more than 1, but less than 1,000.
Something in there. Yeah. That's a ballpark range.
Can we get just under 1,000 in 2018? I think people might have a hard time affording that, even at the low price of $24.99.
Yeah, we might get some complaints. Among
your signed games, will we see a variety of genre, or is there like an obvious majority present, like shmups?
That's actually that's a good question, because the first 3 games in our collection so far probably all share the same genre, right? That's the sort of the theme. That we had Dimension Drive, and we had Shikondo, Soul Eater, and we'll be announcing a 3rd game very, very soon. And all of those are shmups. And then after the 3rd shmup releases, we'll have sort of a different. I don't know how I would phrase it. We'll have a different set of game type, shall we say? That's kind of how we view it going forward. Trying to give it a little bit more rhyme or reason to the games that we release and the order that we release them and so on like this. So right now you're seeing a lot of shmups out of East Asia Soft and the Play Exclusives line, but there will be variety going forward for sure.
And you mentioned Shikondo Soul Eater, which was already put up for sale. Now that was a bit out of order due to the PS4 release kind of happening simultaneously. Is this simultaneous release something you're striving to do with future potential exclusives?
Yeah, essentially we learned when we were selling the Dimension Drive for the PlayStation 4, we had a pretty good idea that we were going to be doing Switch, but it just really wasn't ready for to present to customers and to actually put on sale at the time. And I think we were a little bit disappointed in that, because it's nice to be able to pick up both, or for customers to, have the actual full view of what to expect, so they can, make choices for themselves. So, when we put Shikondo on order for PS4, I think I made it a pretty high priority of mine to try to make sure that the Switch would be ready to go on sale at the same time. Obviously, we're going to have different production, schedules for both those games, but I think it worked out quite well. A lot of people ended up buying both.
And speaking of the PS4, as a community manager for such a popular company, you've probably seen a lot of things happening throughout your experience on the PS4 side with those exclusives. Are there differences in your experience from what you've seen with that community to kind of what you're seeing with the Switch community? Is there anything that stands out as a general kind of difference between the two?
From a collector perspective, I think you see a lot less sort of like PS4 collectors. You don't really see a lot of full set collectors, right? I mean, the library is just insane. So like the way they prioritize which games they buy is much more on a game by game basis. That's for PlayStation 4 users. Whereas like a Nintendo Switch collector, especially in the current sort of climate, in the current stage of its life, they're a lot more focused on getting all the games that are coming out and building like a really nice collection. I think a lot of people are excited by getting in sort of at the ground floor with game collecting, getting into the Switch. And I think that's a really important sort of aspect of the community. Whereas PS4, you still have these, big collectors, people who love collecting PS4 games. I mean, there's tons of amazing PS4 games, but you generally don't see those like full set collectors or people just buying like all games that are coming out. You kind of have that difference between the two communities.
One of the things that PlayAsia is known for with the PS4 is sometimes making games available with English that would otherwise be censored in other markets. And I have a feeling that might be a bit difficult with the Switch, as Nintendo has historically had a negative view towards more mature content. So what's your take on that?
We are optimistic. Obviously, I think you're very much correct that they definitely have a historical viewpoint. But I think Nintendo has relaxed a little bit. We're seeing, certain things. We're seeing their attitude be a little bit more relaxed overall. But that hurdle is still there with Nintendo. Obviously, they have quite a family-centric overall marketing and presentation of their brand. So it's hard to really convince them that XYZ game should really be on their platform. Yeah, it's pretty much you're pretty much correct in saying that it's a little bit more difficult for the Switch. Not impossible because Nintendo is coming around, but it's definitely much more work than doing anything with the PlayStation.
So, are you a collector yourself? And if so, what do you focus on?
The best collection out there, the Play exclusives. But
get that.
Of course. I've always just collected just games that I think are good. I've never really been one for like a full set or really trying to achieve anything specific with my collection. I just think that if a game is good, I want to have it, I want to own it, and I want it to be accessible to me, whether I have an internet connection or not.
Do you have like a favorite system or a favorite game you could share with us?
Virtual Boy.
Favorite game? I'm not sure. I mean, my favorite system right now is definitely the Switch. I mean, that's this console that I'm spending most of my time on. I mean, it's new. It's got awesome stuff. It's got Zelda. Zelda's probably been like the biggest time sink for me right now on the Switch. As much time as I can actually put into it. It's I still haven't finished it yet because the sad truth is when you work in video games, sometimes you don't have as much time to play them as you'd like, but you get there eventually.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shame. That whole conundrum. When we kind of looked at your previous experience in the gaming industry, you had some esports marketing in there. And what would you say the main difference you've noticed between selling, say, for an esports brand over selling for a publisher brand?
There are some big differences, and of course some similarities, as there's a decent audience overlap. Esports is very much like traditional sports in that you're building a fan base or community that you entertain in exchange for advertising to them. A lot of the community building aspects are similar, but I think it mostly ends there.
So because of that kind of makes my next question even more interesting, I think. And this could be a really easy answer. It might even be a little bit complex. Does PlayAsia dabble in the esports world at all, since it's such a big market in Asia?
Not too much, to be honest. We've explored it a little bit in the past. I think in 2014 we actually sponsored the Apex, the Smash tournament. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of just trying to. We haven't really found that our audience super aligns with the esports audience overall, but we do. I think I personally really enjoy esports, so it's something I've been trying to push down the line. Something that PlayAsia doing something in the esports space. Very likely, maybe the fighting game space would probably be the best candidate for that. I see it as a possibility, but not in the near future. It's just it takes a big budget to do anything meaningful in that space, and we're not really at the point where we feel confident enough to take that leap.
So what can you tell our audience about the process that PlayAsia goes through to source some of their games?
We pretty much source everything that we can, if you mean just from a general PlayAsia.com perspective. If people are after a particular product, or we know people will be after that product, we just make sure that we order more. We have a pretty good idea of what the majority of our audience or our market wants to have released or to have available to them. And, we always do our best to make that happen. It can be a bit of a struggle sometimes for certain game titles and, the PR or whatever that comes with it. But, at the end of the day, we'd really like to, stand by what we've always stood by, which is, making sure that gamers have access to the games that they want to play.
Do you guys deal mostly with game development out of the Asian market, or have you been approached by developers in like the States who are just looking for somebody to publish their game?
We get reached out by people all over the world. There's probably more of a Eurocentric trend in the amount of developers and publishers that we've worked with, but we're not really looking at just one region at all. It's whatever region the game came from that we enjoyed.
What about sourcing of your standard distribution of games, things that you're not necessarily publishing, but you have a very wide variety of games from all around the world. What does it take to source all of that?
It takes a lot of manpower and dedication and a good system for it. No, I mean, really, we have, I think at this point, we have probably almost like around 70 employees or so at PlayAsia. So a large portion of these people working with us are putting a lot of effort into working with various distributing partners all around the world. As essentially, we have just a massive database of these products, the information for these products, where to buy these products and so on like this. And that helps us to stay on top of everything. It's just a constant task to stay on board, stay above, board with everything.
How much of a role does fan desire play into what PlayAsia sources?
It definitely plays a role. I think it's not the end all be all of our decision making process. I think, like I said, the first thing is the game is worth playing. The game is fun. If a lot of the fans want a game, we can almost guarantee that that's the case about the game, that they all want to play it and they all are going to enjoy it because probably they've already played it digitally, right? So if fans all want this game, it's probably going to light a fire under our asses to go chase that license. It's not going to always happen, and we're not going to always agree with the fans, but it's almost always going to make us look a little bit deeper into the opportunity.
And I noticed that there's some, let's say, more adult items for sale on your website. I'm not even sure I have a question about that so much as a statement.
Yeah, tons of different things. I mean, we sell a bunch of stuff from Japan. It's I mean, I don't know what you mean by adult. I think most people call it like we'll name the figures and so on like this as some of the more adult items on our website. But yeah, we carry anything that we think that people will enjoy and are enjoying.
When you offer fan service, you get a wider customer. So you get a wider customer plane.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So are there any particularly interesting or peculiar legal hurdles that you have to deal with when you're dealing with so many countries?
Really, it's just respecting the distribution wishes of, for example, Sony or something like this, right? Certain games we just have to avoid certain regions. We try to minimize that in every aspect, and it affects like such a small percentage of our overall product catalog on the website. But, we do adhere to certain aspects of this, and it's just making sure that we're on top of it. But really, at the end of the day, the vast majority of games, we have no problems. We run into very little problems with general import, export, and distribution around the world. If we have to make any changes or any restrictions, it's on not even like 0.5% of our overall products.
Is it true that you speak some German?
Nur ein bisschen.
So I was kind of hoping maybe you could put that to some use to make some of the German market exclusives a little bit more accessible to the rest of the world. And I'll give you, for instance, it can be very difficult to pick up some of the games such as the Market Technic releases.
It's definitely something I can look into more. I mean, we have actually a lot of Germans working at PlayAsia, and then also East Asia Soft, actually. So definitely not out of the question to, at the very least, have that conversation.
Yeah, we've seen a number of releases, games, and unfortunately, in some cases, it's a little bit of shovelware, but things from, say, UIG, Market Technic, that type of thing, and they've pretty much sourced only out of companies like Media Market or Saturn.de, that type of thing, which can be a little bit tough for the rest of the world to get to. You know, people have to use things like a mail forwarder, which basically becomes cumbersome because now we're spreading ourselves out to try to get these releases. It would be great to have another source like PlayAsia to be able to pick up some of those types of games. So I think, some people would appreciate it if you'd look into that.
I can definitely have that conversation. I'll let you know how fruitful it is.
Specifically, the guy who asked that question, he would be very, very. So,
I've figured out how to get my games.
You just have to wait an extra long time. We've kind of gone over with the genre question about the games that are coming out soon. But is there anything else that you can share with everyone about what might be coming in the future?
I can say perhaps that we have some retro-inspired titles on the horizon in a way. That's probably all I can say at the moment.
Hey, that's a great thing to hear, though. I think some people will like to hear that.
Yeah, the retro stuff's going crazy right now with Bloodstained and all that stuff. Like on the horizon, like everybody's loving the retro stuff. There's been
some good games coming out. Yeah.
Okay, so that ends the normal questions. Do you have anything else you want to ask, Sol?
No, I can't wait to hear his answer to the next one, though.
Okay, so generally when we have these interviews, we have 20 or so real questions, and then we have one bonus question that's usually not directly related to what's going on. It's just kind of like a funny question. The question that we dug up for you is that it's been established that the protagonist of Metroid is Samus, who is a human, or at the very least is a human type being. So the question I have is, how does transitioning into the morph ball, which is 0.8 meters in diameter, not crush all of her internal organs?
Video game magic, I guess. I don't. I'm sure there's a wiki page somewhere that's got you covered, right? I mean, I would say
we've tasked you with answering this. The entire
this one, were you?
That's right. The entire gaming world is hinging on this answer from you now, Hardy.
I'd say she just does it very carefully.
That's a safe answer. Yeah,
that works for me.
That's a safe answer. Well, Hardy, I think our listeners are probably super excited to see what you guys have coming. We very much appreciate you being on the show.
It's great to be here and talk to you guys.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back at some point in the future after you guys have had a few more of these exclusives come out, and maybe we could see what else is coming down the road after we know a little bit more from you.
Yeah, we'll have more news soon. A nondescript soon, unfortunately, but they are coming. We are working on those things very hard and every day. Yeah, we have tons of great games, and I'd love to come back and talk about them. When I'm able to talk about them, really.
Definitely let us know, and we'll have you back on the show. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
So that was a real enjoyable conversation. I really, really like talking to Hardy. He seems like a really cool guy.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to, once they get a few more titles out, I'm looking forward to inviting him back on the podcast. That was a really chill interview. I really enjoyed talking to him.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I can't wait to see what those other titles are that they're coming, especially when we kind of get into a new genre. Shmups are great. I like shmups, but I think they can bring some other different stuff, and I can't wait to see what it is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe like an obscure RPG out of the Asian region.
Yeah, it could be something kind of neat. One of the things with PlayAsia that is kind of interesting with the shipping. You know, I talked about it before the interview, you know, the free shipping aspect and being able to get things out in, I'd say, relatively quickly. Although what we're seeing with Dimension Drive, the way that that worked is everybody's shipments kind of got pre-authorized. They got their shipment notifications and the boxes didn't go out for about a week. They're all going out, you know, at the time of the recording for this, they're probably going to go out in the next day or two and actually hit the actual mail. And then it won't be too much longer before everybody gets it. I'm okay with that. I'd rather see that. I'd rather see them kind of get everybody's prepped and then shoot them all, blast them all out at once instead of this slow trickle in.
The pre-advise, yeah. It's also notable that depending on your payment method, you were charged either immediately or at the time of shipping. So that's something that we noticed, because there's a couple people who, before they had it fixed, they were charging shipping. And of course, if you got charged shipping, you just contact them, they take care of it. But some people, when you use PayPal, apparently you're being charged immediately. And if you were charged for shipping, it's there. But if you used a credit card, even though you may have been charged for shipping at the time of checkout, when it actually goes to charge you when it ships, they would have deducted it by then because it was fixed.
Yeah, that's a real shame, but I'm sure that anybody that got hit by that could probably just reach out, talk to PlayAsia, and get that all taken care of.
Yeah, they seem to be, their customer support, from what I've gathered and dealt with, their customer support seems to be fairly decent. I haven't heard of anybody having too many problems.
No, not at all. In fact, I had an order with them a while back for something completely different that I ended up not picking up from them. There was an announcement of a game that was going to be available at a different retailer for a little bit cheaper, a little bit quicker. And just doing even a cancellation, they were very easy to work with. So
I thought you were going to tell me it's one of those statues that they sell.
No. On the topic of shipping, though, I think something we've all noticed lately is that some titles are not quite being distributed as evenly or even fully on time to all the retailers. I know that you noticed this with some titles in your area.
Yeah, I tried to pick up a copy of The Blob, and I tried to pre-order it. The Blob. I was trying to pre-order it because it was coming out on a Tuesday, and I was trying to pre-order it the previous Friday or Saturday. And when I went to do it, it was only available site to store at Best Buy, and it wasn't on Amazon at all. So I could pick it up at Best Buy, but the closest Best Buy to me that had a copy was 80 miles away. It did eventually come back in stock after its release, about a week and a half after it was released, it came back in stock. But it was just weird that a game like The Blob did that. It was showing up at Target too, but it was coming out like 2 days later also, which is also kind of weird, but you know, it seems to be happening sporadically anyway. So it was just kind of awkward. I mean, I knew it was going to come out. I knew that I was going to have a problem getting it. It's not a game that's going to be hard to find later on or anything. But it wasn't the first game that did this. Lost Child from NIS did the same thing. When it first came out, it became kind of hard to pick up. You could pick it up site to store, but you couldn't order it to your house, basically. And so there was another one, and now of course it is also back in stock.
So I picked up on it happening with the Shining Resonance Refrain release over at Best Buy. Say that 5 times fast. Is this a concern? Is this something we're going to see a lot of? I don't remember this happening in the first year-ish of the Switch. I mean, we had a couple of titles that did strange things as far as just not even coming out on their dates. Sign Mora EX was one of those.
Yeah, we had a couple that would come out at one retailer one day and then come out at other retailers the next day. Like Yonder came out at GameStop a week early. So it's I don't know. It seems like they're getting it.
Recent.
That's all recent. So I don't know. I'm thinking it's probably just like initial stock. The main game right now that's still seeing it is Musinks. Like the initial 5,000 copies that had the special edition cover art They came out, and we've not seen the standard cover show up anywhere at all.
Not yet. No, not yet.
So it's and its release date is well past at this point. So I'm wondering what's going on with that. I'm pretty sure it's going to show up, but we haven't heard anything. So I'm just kind of wondering what's going on with that, because I know people who legitimately want that game who can't get it right now.
So for me, I had two instances here. The first was Crash Bandicoot. So like a lot of people, I jumped on when Amazon had the pricing error for Crash. And then a bunch of people, including myself, got a shipping notice that said, hey, this isn't going to be sending out for like 2 weeks after the actual release date. So I just ordered it on Best Buy, let that come in. And then when the Amazon one came in, I took that over to Best Buy and got my money back from there so I could get the good price over at Amazon. And we can talk about, I actually want to talk about the morality of something like that in a second. But I want to give you the other example because, we tend to make fun of this quite a bit here. RBI 18. What the hell? RBI 18 actually came out.
Yeah.
What the hell?
But we didn't even notice it. Just somebody was like, hey, Target has these. And it's just like, wow. Like everybody else had it pushed out. Everybody else had it pushed out to August, and then magically they're just in stock at Target. Like you could go into the store and get one.
Yeah, we checked BrickSeek. We used BrickSeek.com to look around, and there were copies. Not too many copies, but there were copies all over the place. So my wife went over to the store, picked up a couple of copies, one for me and one for Marith down in Australia. And so we have those. When she went to go do this, in fact, the guy had to pull the copy out of the little display window thing over there so that we could have the other copy they had at that store. And then I had checked online. I looked at GameStop that night. The closest copy to me was like 80 miles away. And that's it. Best Buy still, as far as I know, to this moment as of recording, still shows it for August. So right now, only places, and Amazon doesn't even have it listed for the Switch. Amazon doesn't have a listing for RBI 18 for the Switch at all. So the only places you can pick this up that I know of locally, for me, would be Target and GameStop now, because GameStop finally did stock some.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of bewildered about how that even all happened.
It's pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, because it was just kind of under the radar. Like nobody expected it, and just all of a sudden there it was. So
well, even the official MLB.com account had tweeted out that there was a delay.
Yeah.
So everybody thought that when Best Buy moved their date out, that was where it was going to land.
I'm just wondering if maybe it was they weren't supposed to ship out,
like a production shortage, or just
well, maybe they were supposed to sit in a warehouse until the due date, and
possibly,
and they just didn't.
I mean, originally I thought maybe Target broke a street date. Like they got their stock first and then they accidentally broke a street date. Like somebody didn't read a release date list or whatever and just messed up. But then GameStop started stocking it like a day or two later after Target did. So I don't know. But so let me ask you this. What do you think about my practice of floating a game from one retailer to return it another in these cases? I mean, I want to get the lowest price, but I also want the game right away. And I personally feel that if I'm returning the product that's in an acceptable condition, I mean, I'm taking them a sealed copy. It's the same game I would have got, the same barcode, same contents. Is that a morality issue or does that even matter? I'm buying 2 copies. I'm putting money out for 2 copies.
Yeah,
I'm just not opening one of them.
But then you're getting the money back from you're not necessarily stealing a sale from a particular company, but I mean, think about it in terms of like, what if the one you return never gets sold? It's a minute amount of money, obviously, for like Walmart, but it's still I don't know. It's a
Well, I mean, if it doesn't
area.
get sold, was it going to get sold anyways?
No, I mean, maybe not, but you when you order it from like a retail, well, not a retail, when you order it from an online retail, though, you know, they might not have to procure your copy, or they might not have to send your copy to a store that otherwise might not get a copy of. So now obviously with Crash, that's, you don't really have to worry about that, but you know, for other games, niche titles that, you know, people want, or even something like, you know, like Aqua or Snow Moto, for example. Let's say you ordered a couple of those from a retailer because they were getting them a little bit early, but you got a better price somewhere else. And then you go and return those, and now they're at that store. What are they going to do with them? Because nobody's going to come in and buy those, more than likely. So
that might be true, but it wasn't my fault that they set a price higher than the other store, kind of thing. So I don't know. I thought about it a little bit, but I'm not necessarily convinced that it's a moral quandary. I guess what I would ask is if any of the listeners think that it is, or even if you don't think that it is, let us know. I'd love to talk to you guys about that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a moral gray area, because you're not like ripping off a company, because technically they're getting their goods back. It's almost like you're borrowing it like it's a library.
Sort of, but I am returning it within the window. So
yeah, well, I mean, they have return specifications for a reason, I guess.
That's true. But I will say that I wouldn't have to do that if things were arriving on time. And that kind of leads me into my next topic here. Things having dates slip. We've kind of seen an inordinate amount of dates slipping for titles. They'll get a ship date announced, then they move, sometimes multiple times.
The
just
RBI
like
baseball.
RBI 18. Yeah. This is happening kind of a lot. And then we can get into this other game in just a second. Let's just start there. What do you think about that whole slippage of dates?
The slippage of dates is I don't know, it's becoming kind of it's an annoyance more than a problem, because it's not a whole lot of games doing it, and when it is happening, it's not always a high profile game. There's not really been a too high profile game that has been pushed after an initial launch date is announced. So, I mean, we're not talking about, you know, Octopath Traveler being pushed. So no. we're talking about you know, these other games like RBI baseball, but it's.
I know we talk about that a lot, but it's just a shining example of things like this.
Yeah, it's a RBI baseball is basically a meme at this point, but it's yeah. I mean, I don't know how big of a deal it is. I mean, it's an annoyance, but it's not usually a title that, for me anyway, it's not a title that I'm chomping at the bit to play. Most of the time, there is one that I would really like to play, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, that consistently got pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And then what ended up inevitably happening with that one is you know, what we'll talk about, basically.
Well, I mean, let's go into it. I mean, it's Redout.
Yeah,
right?
Redout. So Redout's a game that I actually do want to play. Like, I was looking forward to it. And then it got pushed out and pushed out and pushed out, and no launch or no date announced, a date, no date announced, no date. And finally, people started getting cancellations, from their Best Buy orders. And then I never got a cancellation because I'd ordered it from Amazon. And then like a month and a half later, I got a cancellation from Amazon. So right. Redout is officially canceled at this point, as far as I can tell.
No, the developers insist that it's still coming. And so now I'm wondering, are they changing publishers? This was originally supposed to be a Nicholas published game.
I mean, I've heard tell that sometimes dealing with Nicholas is a little bit hard. Like, they have some pretty demanding requirements to publish with them. So I don't know. I do know that this is the first game that got pushed that got canceled for me. The only other cancellations that I've heard about going on is like the people who get those really, really big discounts, like the people who got the Pokemon Let's Go bundles for like $47, those ultimately did get canceled.
Which is an error, right?
Yeah,
that's an error. That's
Yeah.
not like a game cancellation.
Yeah.
That this one seemed to be.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. That's the only thing I'm really hearing getting canceled is stuff that's doing that, and that's a major price error because usually they will give you the game, like how we got Battle Chasers for a really low price. But that's the only thing I'm ever hearing getting canceled are extreme price errors. I've never heard of a game that was announced with a date, passing the date over and over and over and over again, getting completely canned. There's been like one or two, but Redout being the big one and the only one that comes to my mind right now.
Well, the other one that I can think of that's in a very, very similar situation to Redout, in fact, it's almost identical, was Constructor, which was announced for the UK, which is probably why you didn't have that in your head.
It's not on my radar.
I know that you're not importing all these things, but Constructor was also announced a long time ago, got pushed and pushed and pushed, had a date fall back a number of times, and then disappeared. It got canceled out of the system. But then the developers came out and said, no, it's still in the works. It's still coming. So, we're in a position with that one very, very similar to what we are with Redout, where the developers are all saying, no, it's still coming. We just don't know when, and we don't know how or who we're working on it. Well, if you were working on it back then, just say that. Don't put out cover pictures. If you don't think you're going to have this to market that quickly, don't tease everybody with it, because eventually you'll become vaporware. People just won't want to buy it on principle anymore.
Yeah, that should be a very real concern for the companies that are doing this, that you can only miss the date so much before people are going to lose faith in your ability to deliver a game that's going to be worth playing.
It's not even just faith, it's interest.
Well, yeah, it's that too. Well, no, because eventually, depending on the title and the company, obviously Constructor's not going to have the same issue, but depending on the company and the game, it may drum up additional interest, but the faith that the game's going to be any good is gone. The perfect example of that is going to be Duke Nukem Forever. It was in limbo for a decade, almost two,
right.
And then it gets picked up by 2K, which you expect is going to do a good job, but you don't know that it's going to deliver on all the promises that were made before, and then it shows up and it was a steaming pile. So
yeah, although we don't necessarily need 10 years to make a steaming pile, there's been plenty of that in a much shorter amount of time.
Yeah, well, there's games that literally have steaming piles in them.
We won't mention that. I'm kind of hoping that this next game is not a steaming pile, but I don't have as much experience about it. But I'll do a little bit of a intro, and then you can tell me all about it. So, last podcast we talked about a couple of free to play games. We talked about the new Pokemon one. We talked about the Fallout one. This is a little bit of a trend, and now there's been an announcement for another one. This free-to-play third-person shooter MMO is Warframe. And right now, there's no actual date for the release, but this game is new to me. So, although I know the original was released back in 2013, I was busy playing a lot of other things. But I did get a chance to look at some of the gameplay, and it's not looking too bad. I kind of think it's kind of neat. But my only concern is I'm not sure that the experience for that type of game will be optimal on the Switch. It looks like something I'd rather just play on my PC. Tell me a little bit more. Convince me that this would be good, but give our listeners some history, because I know you know a little bit more about this. Okay, so Warframe is a third-person looter shooter. Basically, it's a grind. So if you don't like games that have grinding in it, then Warframe's not going to be your cup of tea. But it was a game that was developed in early access on the PC. It wasn't doing so super well at one point, and then it got picked up by a well-known individual by the name of Total Biscuit, and he basically
turned it around for them. Like they will tell you they owe a lot of their success to his videos and his praise of their game. So the game is it's kind of like Destiny, but really good. Like it's, you know, Destiny 2 kind of flopped for me especially, but Warframe was always good. I'm a big fan of third-person shooters, and as far as its playability on the Switch goes, I can tell you that the spiritual predecessor of it is a game called Dark Sector, which was originally supposed to be a launch title for the 360, and then it got pushed out. They changed a whole bunch of stuff about it, and then when they finally released it, it was a completely different game, and it was a third-person shooter, basically. It's kind of reminiscent of Resident Evil at the time, because it was kind of over the shoulder. You had different guns, you collected the armor and stuff like that, and you had a glaive in your hand. You could slow down time when you throw it and follow it around, cut off people's limbs and stuff. So it was really fun. It was a really great game. It's one of my favorite games on the 360. It came out on PC also, but it played really well. Like if you enjoyed Resident Evil 4, the control setup for that is very similar to how Dark Sector played. So with that in mind, Warframe, it takes place after it. It's in the same universe. They have a lot of throwbacks. The logo they use for Warframe is the same logo that was in Dark Sector. So it's a really good game. So it playing on the Switch, I think is going to be fine. I think the controls are going to be really good and tight. And I'm mainly saying that not just because I like the game itself, and I've played Dark Sector with a controller and didn't have any problems. In fact, I played through Dark Sector 3 times, including the hardest difficulty. And the online was kind of touchy, but there wasn't a whole lot of people playing at the time, because by the time I bought Dark Sector, it was like $8 new at Walmart. So there wasn't a whole lot of online people. So it's just a little bit kind of sketchy. But Warframe is basically 100% online, so you know their netcode's going to be good. They're used to it. But the big reason why I think it's going to play well and do well on the Switch is because the people who are porting it over are Panic Button. And Panic Button are the people who brought us Wolfenstein and Doom to the Switch.
So now that's really interesting because, you know, Doom being the first of those two games to hit was visually extremely impressive for the platform.
Yes.
Obviously, it's not going to compare to PC. You know,
yeah.
Look at what we're talking about. Look at what we're dealing with. But the fact that you can pick up your Switch, throw Doom in, or turn Doom on and like play that, and it's relatively close, is pretty damn impressive.
It is, but you also got to look at the fact that Doom came out on PC in 2016. So,
yeah, I think so.
The game came out on the Switch a year later, a year and some change. So those graphics were pretty new. So they had to, they obviously had to downgrade some stuff. Warframe came out in 2013. So we're talking a little bit easier. And then Panic Button, you know, they gave us Doom and Wolfenstein, which are the shooters, the fast-paced shooters, but they also are the ones who ported over, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rocket League.
Interesting.
So they have, so far, as far as I'm concerned, they're 3 for 3 in the PC to Switch porting. Or I guess you could say console to Switch porting, because I don't know what version they ported over. But games that were predominantly impressive on the PC, they've been able to port them over, whether they used console versions or not. I don't know, probably. But they all came over. They were all impressive. Panic Button has been churning out good stuff. Like, the people who handled the ports for WWE need to get a hold of Panic Button.
Yeah, they need some guidance, some assistance.
Yes, so I'm looking forward to it. I think Warframe is a great game on PC, and I think it's in the right hands. If Warframe can work on the Switch, it's in the hands of the people who are going to make it work.
With Warframe being an online game, because correct me if I'm wrong, there's no offline mode for that, right?
No, obviously you can play solo, but it's online only. But that's because that's because it's a free-to-play game, so they make their money off of microtransactions and cosmetics and stuff. So having it online only is it's not really, I don't want to say it's a drawback, but that's the price that you have to pay, basically. You have to, you want to enjoy the game, you're going to have to play it online. Sorry, it's free, so you're not paying for a game that you may not be able to play all the time. But
this is something that's a bit of a concern for some people, especially when you talk about a portable system, right? Because I can get up and I can take it throughout my house, but the moment I leave my house, I've either got to connect to a hotspot or be somewhere else that has Wi-Fi if I want to jump on and play. And you know how that is. That's not always even a guarantee, because you can't necessarily jump onto Starbucks Wi-Fi and play games very well, or McDonald's Wi-Fi, or whatever you have near you. So it's just kind of interesting. We've seen Fortnite come in, and that's obviously going to be an online experience as well. So the reception of this, now the good news is that this is a free-to-play game. It's not like somebody's going to drop down $40 or $60 or whatever for one of these and then be required on top of that to be connected. So that's great. But it is something we're starting to see more and more of on a system that walks away from your house.
Yeah, but I feel like Warframe, like Fortnite, I know that people have played on hotspots, and aside from a little bit of lag, it's been pretty doable. But Warframe, I don't feel is a game that you want to play on the go necessarily. Like, you might take it and play handheld mode when you go to like a friend's house or something, if you're quote unquote LANing, because that's what the kids do at their LAN parties these days. Not like what we used to do, but so if you're taking it to a friend's house, I could see you playing it in portable mode on their network. But it's a looter shooter, so it's not something that you pick up, play a quick 10-15 minute match, 20-30 minute match, however long Fortnite matches last on average. You're not playing it for that. You're not getting on a bus and being like, okay, I'll play a match of Warframe. That's not how it works. When you sit down on Warframe, you're dedicating X amount of time to do the objective that you are there to do. So I don't see it being a huge deal, because I don't think it's the type of game that people are going to play on the bus or the subway at all. I think it's a game that you're only going to play when you are sitting down somewhere dedicated, so that you can devote, 1, 2, 3 hours at a time plus. So I don't see that being a huge drawback. Fortnite, yeah, people, those are quick little matches, pass a little bit of time, but Warframe's not. Warframe it's more of a dedication type game. It's got the RPG elements that require more dedication than 10-15 minutes at a time.
So let me ask you this: did you expect this? Was this a shocker to you?
Oh, absolutely. I did not expect this at all. When they announced it, I was overjoyed, because I like Warframe. I played it on the PC a little bit. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I loved Dark Sector. So any excuse to play a good game on my preferred platform, I'm going to be happy with. And I feel like Warframe is a great match. Like, I want to see them succeed. Digital Extreme, like I want to see them succeed with this. It's a great game that is underrated for the most part. A lot of people have never heard of or even played Warframe, but it's a phenomenal game. It's one of those. It would be considered a diamond in the rough if it didn't have as big of a player base as it has. And it has to have that big of a player base in order to survive, because they make their money on microtransactions and stuff. So I think it's going to be great on the Switch. And I was pleasantly surprised that it was coming.
Do you have other titles that are similar to this that you can think of, or that are also free-to-plays that you realistically think could make the leap?
As far as free-to-play go, not off the top of my head. It's free-to-play is kind of a mixed bag. There's the ones that I really enjoy are super in-depth. so it'd be really hard to translate those over to a console. You have some that are out there that are doing well on consoles, like the DC Heroes universe, DC Universe Online. That's it. So that did really well on the PlayStation, and it's still doing well. And then it went from monthly to free to play. So it might do okay as long as it doesn't have a whole lot of hotkeying. When it comes to games like MMOs, if they don't have a whole lot of hotkeying, then you can kind of get away with it. So DC Universe Online might actually be okay on the Switch. I would think it would be powerful enough to run it because the game is older than Warframe, I believe. So I would say it'd probably run pretty well.
You know, way back in the day, when the Orange Box came out, Team Fortress 2 was released on some consoles. Now, I don't think it was the same code base because they didn't get nearly the patches. So, but how cool would that be too?
That'd be great. I would love.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, I would love Team Fortress 2. The problem with Team Fortress 2 though is that Valve is not going to enlist the help of somebody to port it over. And I played Team Fortress 2 on the Xbox 360 and it was horrible. Like
it was nowhere near as good as a PC.
I've dumped many hours into it on PC, and I know you played on a more semi-professional level than I did, so you've probably dumped a whole lot more hours in it than I did. But I can tell you that the console version, although great on paper, in practice was horrible.
Yeah, it just didn't work. Although, gosh, I can't help but think that having that on the couch is a great idea. I know it's an aged game, but it still has quite a few players. I mean, it's what, like number 4 or something now on the Steam list for constant players online or something like that. It's fallen. It used to be number 1 for the longest time.
Yeah. On Steam right now, I think it's PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That makes a lot more sense at this point in time. The game type has changed. What's popular right now is very different than what it was when I was playing Team Fortress 2. But I just can't help but think of different things along these lines. Not necessarily free to play, but I've wanted something like this forever, and I'm sort of surprised we don't see it on phones. World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft seems like it would be a touchscreen dream. You know, you've got your bars with your abilities across the bottom. You know, it's doable. I don't know that it would be the best experience, obviously.
I think that with games like World of Warcraft, you're going to run into a resolution constraint because there's a lot of hotkeying and macroing that you have to do with World of Warcraft in order to be efficient at late game. You have to do a lot of hotkeying and macroing. So
late game, yes, but there's a lot of players that are not that hardcore. They're just casual players who log in for, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, just to keep their $15 a month viable.
Yeah, but see, and then you're also running into another problem when you do something like that, is their monthly subscription. If you're not playing on the PC, you're paying a monthly subscription for what? I mean, on your console, like it worked for DC Universe Online for a little bit when it first came out on the PlayStation, but it's free to play now. Another free to play MMO that might have been okay at one point would be WildStar, but even that's kind of fun because that was supposed to be the World of Warcraft killer, because all of them are supposed to be World of Warcraft killers that come out, but that one would have been.
I know we're drifting a little bit, but the closest thing we ever saw that was like World of Warcraft 2.0 was Rift.
Yeah, yeah, and Rift is free to play now as well. So Rift, right. I could see Rift doing okay. As far as World of Warcraft goes, though, I think being able to manage your inventory, like they have that app that let you do the auctions and stuff, the armory and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, and they just recently retired one of their apps, so that may be off the table. But something like that would be kind of neat. It's almost like a Fallout Shelter what Fallout Shelter is to Fallout, that could be to World of Warcraft on the Switch or something like that. That'd be kind of neat.
They could bring that to touchscreens.
Yeah, so
I kind of agree.
That'd be kind of neat. But yeah, I think that would be, when you start talking about the subscription model on console, you start to get into some murky water.
Shifting gears, the NES Classic Edition is back on shelves, and it seems to be much easier to pick up now. In fact, I was doing some prep work for the podcast. I looked it up on GameStop, and not only did they have it available in stores, they had a listing right there to buy it online in stock, or you could get it by itself or in various bundles. And boy, that's a level of availability that we definitely did not see previously.
Yeah, the rarity for it now is the second controller. That's what's hard to find. They're maintaining roughly 17% in stock at like Walmart with that. I managed to I ordered an NES Classic through Amazon Prime because the Prime members got an early access to it, and then on my lunch break the same day at 11 o'clock, I walked into a Walmart and they had 6 of them. So
yeah, it's definitely around a lot more.
But I didn't see any controllers anywhere. I did end up I ordered one from Walmart when they went on sale the same day, site to store, and it was limited to 1 per customer. So I had my wife order one also. And then I ended up selling at cost to another guy I work with who ended up not being able to get one because he missed the window. So that's the rare thing. But even that, you can apparently order them from GameStop. They just ship out later, and you can go pick them up. But that's what the rare thing is people not being able to find controllers right now.
Yeah, but this is still a huge step up. So, I mean, I was really big into the Classic Edition when it first came out, the NES Classic Edition, and then that carried into the SNES. And the first time around, it was if you weren't standing outside of a store on day of release, a couple of hours minimum before, you probably didn't get one. And if you were in line and you weren't, in the first 10, you probably didn't get one unless you were at a bigger store that happened to get a bunch of more stock. And that was it. I mean, the NES basically trickled in a couple of places after that, and nobody saw it. So if you didn't get it right away, you probably didn't get it. And then, hands off for a little bit, and then they announced the SNES. When that one came out, it was a little bit easier to get. It wasn't necessarily everywhere, but it was a lot easier to pick up.
Yeah, there were still some people who had problems getting it. I ended up getting an SNES Classic a week after they came out. I found one in a store about 15 minutes away. So I took an early lunch from work and went and picked it up. And when I called them, they had 4. When I got there, they only had the one that I'd called about. So they were a little bit scarce. Then a few days later, I found another one used at a GameStop for $75. So I picked that up too. And then I was going to give one to a friend. He ended up not wanting it, so I ended up with 2. So I just started playing around with the mod tools for it after that. But so I got one that's standard stock and one that I've been toying around with just in case I don't want to break it and not have another one. So, but
each step along the way has been a little bit easier, a little bit easier.
It's been much easier. The SNES, the first NES was hard to find. The SNES was slightly easier to find. Still, you might have to wait a little while, but you didn't pay scalper prices most of the time. And then the second wave, but the second release of the NES Classic is much easier to find. I'm seeing them in stores all over the place. And then now that it's coming out, I'm seeing more SNES Classics come out as well. And the main point behind that for me is that there is a difference between the original release of the NES Classic and this one, and that is that one, the box is different. There's an ESRB rating on the front of the new releases box as opposed to the back, which the original one had, and they moved the Nintendo seal of approval to the other side. So that is the cosmetic change. But then if you open up the console itself, the new version of the NES Classic runs the same board as the SNES Classic, whereas the original had a different one. So I think that's probably why we saw a resurgence of SNES Classics when the new NES Classics came out, because they're all using the same boards at this point. So they're just throwing them all together, shipping them all out. And
and to be clear, it's not just the same chipset. It's almost quite literally the same motherboard. There are very, very minute differences. Some markings are slightly different between the two, but it's essentially the SNES's board with the all-winner, the same all-winner chip from all releases. Because essentially the only difference between the motherboards anyways is a little bit of transistor positioning, some layout on there, but ultimately in the end they're the same spec between the different versions. What this does though for you and for Nintendo here is it makes the manufacturing process more streamlined. They can push out, a giant chunk of boards, and then they can divvy them up however they want. They can say, well, we need this many for NES, this many for SNES, drop the software on it, and off it goes to market.
Yeah, and you can kind of relate this back to the Switch in that the initial release of the Switch, they went on sale, and then they were kind of scarce for a couple months before they started showing up more readily available in stock in places. So that is kind of relatable, the scarcity at the initial release. But what it also does is that if there is going to be a Switch update, they're going to change the hardware for whatever reason, Nintendo now has a idea and a practice in which they can use existing hardware they have, change one or two things, and mass produce everything out. So that, I think that will help with future iterations of the Switch not being quite as scarce as the original one was.
And you're kind of drifting on to a topic I wasn't necessarily planning on hitting, but we can cycle back around to the NES Classic in just a second, because I have more to talk about there. But while we're talking about Switch revisions, this is not something we go too in depth on here, just because of the nature of our community, what we're all about, because we are collectors. I mean, that's the root of what we are. We are supporting the companies that are physically producing the hardware, the software, etc. But there's a lot of talk on the other side of this market with regards to hacking the Switch. And so you start getting into talking about another revision of the Switch, and it seems as though they are producing a new version of the Switch now, or are prepared to produce a new version after the vulnerabilities were found in the original release of the Switch. There's something to do with the USB port and how that gets worked in on the hardware and triggered by software that was exploitable. And the exploit is not something that can be stopped by a revision, a software revision on the original hardware. It's a vulnerability built into hardware, and at such a level that anybody that has one of these pieces of original hardware in the future, they might see their value for that particular revision go up slightly over time versus the newer revisions that are either about coming out or have started coming out. And that's kind of an interesting change in the hardware. It's like an invisible revision.
Yeah, it's going to be like the what Microsoft had to do with the Xbox 360s to correct the red ring. They went through several different motherboards before they finally found one that worked. The solder points all worked with the heat flow and stuff like that. So, but for the main point though, for those was that there was virtually no difference other than that. Cosmetically, they were the same. They played the games the same way and everything like that. So if you didn't know about, if you were a late adopter, you didn't know about what was going on before, you never really knew. So it's going to be the same way for the Switch. I don't see them changing things like increase clock speeds and stuff like that, and at least not too much, which would make loading a little bit better. I don't see them doing stuff like that. I see it being, patch their hole and ship it out, and everything will be the same. So if you come into the Switch game late, you would never know.
So some interesting questions arrive from the topic of the NES Classic and the SNES Classic. And I think the main one that comes up most often is, what is next? And there's a couple of obvious choices in my mind, and it sort of depends on what direction you go. The first is simply the next console system in succession, the Nintendo 64. I'm not so certain that this is what's going to happen, at least not anytime soon. The 64 has a few hurdles to overcome before Nintendo can do this the right way. The first is the technical hurdle. The R16 chip that's used on the board probably isn't quite powerful enough to handle most of the 64's decent games, but the games themselves are the real issue in my mind. A big portion of what a Classic Edition 64 lineup should be probably includes games from Rare.
Yeah, I knew where you were going with that.
Yeah, Rare being under the Microsoft banner, that adds a challenge to what Nintendo would have to do to make the Classic Edition worth buying.
Now that you kind of mentioned that, though, Nintendo and Microsoft are playing ball.
I know, they're getting cozy, and maybe this is the opportunity. Maybe this is part of that. I don't know, but my question to you for the 64 Classic Edition is, could they do it without Rare and sell?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a yes and no, but I'm going to lean towards yes. And the reason being is going to be, people are going to buy it. People are going to buy anything Nintendo puts out. There's going to be people who are going to buy it. I know that a lot of the games that were on the NES Classic weren't my cup of tea, and some of the games I thought should have been on it weren't on it. And then the SNES Classic was there's a glaring glaring hole there with Chrono Trigger not being on the system.
Oh, of course.
So they will sell. There were some good titles, obviously, on the 64 that wouldn't matter, that Rare's not around. Like you've got your Mario 64, your Smash, your Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, Star Fox. You got the first party properties that are definitely going to be on there. I mean, you got two Zeldas that are, one was considered the greatest Zelda ever made until Breath of the Wild came out for most people.
Second greatest.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. So I think
to the Past. Sorry.
Well, I mean, okay. So to most fogies like us, Link to the Past is probably the best Zelda. I agree. But to a lot of people, especially the ones that were younger when the 64 came out, who never played the Super Nintendo because they were too young at the time.
No, I know. Ocarina
is going to be considered
something else.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not bad. I don't know. In the wake of what came out with Breath of the Wild, I don't know that you're going to go back and truly, I mean, it's going to have nostalgia for sure, but Breath of the Wild's phenomenal. It's amazing. That's a whole separate conversation. Maybe one day we should explore that in a lot more depth and talk about the Zelda series overall. But
OTS Zelda edition.
I don't see why not. And let us know, listeners, if this is something you want. We can talk about it.
An entire show dedicated to Zelda. That'd work.
I don't see why not. There's plenty of Zelda material.
Yeah.
That being said, though, there's another direction we could go with the Classic Edition. This has also been talked about quite a bit. A Game Boy Classic Edition. Now, this would take things in a very different direction, and I think there's some challenges that would need to be overcome in this space as well. You could obviously use the same chipset that's being used today, but I don't think you'd want the same board to be used, just the size. If you go in the direction of the Game Boy, do you release it in color or do you release it in its, I'll say black and white, but
monochrome.
Greenish tint? Yeah, monochrome is probably the better way to put that. Where do you even source screens that output this resolution to look nearly the same? And that greenish color is sort of iconic to the original Game Boy.
And you'd have to
there's a lot
it.
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions about this. What do you think? Which direction would you go with some of this?
I almost feel like it would almost be better for them to release the re-release an original Game Boy and then just sell like a preloaded flash cart. It feels like that would be the better route, the cheaper route for them, because when you start talking about having to add features like a backlit screen, obviously they're going to have to go with a different battery setup, so they're not going to have 4 AA's. It's going to have to be a lithium battery.
Yeah, but I don't know anybody that wants to carry around the giant Game Boy. I mean, I think you go to something like the Game Boy Pocket's size or the Game Boy Light size.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, is that's what they would do, because the classic editions that we've already got are not the same size as the original console.
Right.
So they would shrink it down, obviously. It'd probably be the size of a Game Boy Pocket, would be my guess.
There was a Game Boy Pocket that had the same colors as the original Game Boy. I mean, the look of it was the same gray plastic with the same basic look to it. And to me, that's what you do. You take the same mold and you just release a new version of that, but you don't have an actual cartridge slot on it, and you put a lithium battery in there and an updated screen, that type of thing. I mean, that's the direction I would go, but I think you support it in color, and I think you give the option to play it in either the color mode or the monochrome mode. I think either of those would work. But if you go down this road, if you're Nintendo and you release a Game Boy Classic Edition, you're going to see something on it that you didn't see on any of these other systems. You're going to see Pokemon.
Maybe. I mean, you would need to. You would need to.
Red and blue would happen.
Yeah, red, blue, and yellow. But no, they could put green on there.
They could put green on there.
The first time that you see green in an official green in America, that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah,
like they did with Star Fox 2. But
I mean, there's a lot of really good titles from that era. A lot of potential here.
Yeah, and then you could also, if you added Wi-Fi to it, you could support multiplayer games without a link cable like the old Game Boys used to use.
Yeah, but I kind of think they missed the boat on that, on putting the Wi-Fi chips, because the R16 can handle it. They didn't do that with these other classic editions, and they could have just had an official way to add games to these systems, and they didn't.
Yeah,
do that.
That's an official way to add games. Yeah, but at the same time, they wanted to stick as close as possible to the original releases, which didn't have it. So, but the Game Boy did have linked multiplayer, and having a Wi-Fi connection that only lets you play with other local Game Boys would make sense.
Yeah, but I think the cop out to that is they wouldn't do that. They would just give you a port and a link cable that you could use.
Probably. It'd be a USB cable more than likely.
Yeah, more than likely. But here's to hoping that the SNES is not the final entry in the Classic Edition line, one way or the other.
I don't know. I would almost be more receptive to a NES and SNES Classic 2. They released another one that had different games. Maybe the updated style. Maybe the NES Classic 2 is the top loader, and the SNES Classic 2 is the second generation. We
might see that as a potential limited type release. Look at what happened with the Shonen Jump version of the Famicom, the mini Famicom in Japan.
Yeah.
Beautiful little offshoot of that, the gold color.
Uh-huh.
So sticking to more Nintendo discussion, the only thing more nerve-wracking for Nintendo lately, aside from their game release schedule, is their stock value. Little background here. Nintendo is listed as NTDOY on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Now, to preface this, Nintendo's current value is at a level that hasn't been seen since 2010. Their peak value this year hasn't been seen since 2008, to give you some context. But we're focusing this discussion specifically on what's going on just recently, as it's taken a relative downturn. Coming into E3, Nintendo stock closed at 41,640 yen, or about $47.63 per share. That was on June 11th, the day prior to their E3 press conference. By June 19th, 1 week after their press conference, their stock dropped to 36,060 yen, or about $40.88 per share. That, now mind you, that is still $1.27 above their 52-week low, but pretty far from the $58.45 per share 52-week high at the time that I was gathering these numbers. So the focus that Nintendo spent at E3 with Smash, as anticipated as that was by its fan base, really took away from the broader view that Nintendo has been giving us prior to that event. And in reality, we only got to look at a few decent titles, and it looked as if there was a big hole in what Nintendo was going to bring us through fall and winter.
Yeah, it had a lot of people singing doom and gloom for them. I even saw one guy on Twitter talk about how Nintendo should stop making hardware and start making games for other systems like Sega did after the Dreamcast went down.
I think that's a bit of a rush to judgment.
Yeah, especially considering that their stock did start to recover a little bit after the dust settled, everything was said and done, because they haven't even announced their fall lineup yet. Like, they've got a whole lot of games that are coming out that haven't been announced yet. Games that are coming out this year that haven't been announced yet. So
that's a pretty big point.
It's a bit premature to start talking about the end of Nintendo when they haven't even told you what they're doing for the rest of the year, let alone, next year and beyond.
Well, I think that even without knowing that, the known lineup, the stuff we know is coming, is a lot stronger than it seems. Look at November. What's happening in November?
Pokemon, yeah. And then, and you also, in October, you've got Mario Party. And in December, you've got Smash.
These are big titles. And all it was just a little bit heavy on the Smash reveal. I know that they're excited about it. I think everybody's a little bit excited, even if you're not a big Smash fan. But those of us that are Smash fans are very excited about it. But we still wanted to see a bunch of other stuff too. I don't think there's anybody that you would talk to that go, no, just show me Smash. No, I think other people... I think everybody wanted to see other properties, and I think that's really the only misstep that they had here, is that they had an opportunity to give us a little bit other stuff and they didn't do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that, oh gosh, the sky is falling and they should close their doors and become Sega.
Yeah,
it's not really the way to go.
I feel like Nintendo is more focusing on their directs. E3 is not really where they want to showcase stuff anymore. It doesn't feel like. I feel like they like doing their showcase, their directs, and that I think that's what they're waiting for. And there's rumors that there's going to be another direct soon. Of course, those rumors you can take with a grain of salt. I'm not even going to really go through any of them because nothing's been confirmed at all. So,
although I will say, if the rumors are true, that by the time you hear this, we will have already had the direct.
Yes.
So that's very possible.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, and there was a couple of things that were projected in the rumor set that did end up coming true, but like a couple days later. But it's not enough for me to agree. One blaring red flag for me is the fact that the date they have set for it is a Sunday, and I don't feel like,
which is unusual.
I don't think Nintendo. I mean, obviously they could do it, but it doesn't feel like something they would do. But it's so you can take that with a grain of salt. But I feel like we're going to get another direct probably within the next month or two, and it's going to have a lot of stuff that we didn't see coming. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, and I would completely welcome if they're like, hey, you remember that Luigi's Mansion port we're doing over to the 3DS? Yeah, it's coming to Switch too.
I could see something like that. I could also see maybe a couple of the rumors even being true. some of that's just wishful thinking, but at the same time, Nintendo knows what is popular. You know, their approach to directs, their approach to just getting information to the public in general is not the same model that Microsoft or Sony uses, or any of the game companies other than Nintendo for that matter. They like to space things out. They like to give you a couple of hits of stuff during their direct, and then they give you a little bit more time. And then maybe there's a little mini direct where you get a focus on one little thing, and then you go for another month or so, and then you get another direct. And then they kind of give you that trickle, which is really great because it keeps you focused on, you know, the shorter blocks of time, giving you lots of little bits of information, kind of keeps you, you know, engaged on that. And I really like that. I think that's part of what makes their directs so exciting is it's not once a year. This happens multiple times per year.
Yeah, and the directs tend not to focus on things they've already discussed in detail. So you may know of a game that's going to be coming out and then the direct confirms it for you, but at the next direct, unless there is a gigantic news item pertaining to something like Smash, you're not going to see Smash at the next direct. So
right.
That's something else to keep in mind and look forward to, that when they do come out with more announcements, they're not going to be focused on stuff that we already know about, aside from, you know, we know the game's coming, they're going to show it to us. So
yeah, this stock drop is just a blip on the radar. They just talked about cash on hand, and it's a bit of a measure of liquidity of the company. So that is up to $4.5 billion, which, yes, it seems like a lot, but I think you and I were talking about this the other day, and you sort of said that best to me. They had to rely on that type of dollars to weather their darker periods.
Yep. Yeah, they had to batten down the hatches when they were going through like the Wii U and stuff like that, stuff that wasn't doing well, the Virtual Boy, stuff that didn't do well when they released it. They had to rely on what they had to keep them afloat, so that they didn't have issues, and then they bounced back later.
Well, I mean, in our community, we love Nintendo in general. I'm not going to say that it's a perfect relationship. I'm not going to say that they've been immaculate. I think there's a lot of realists in our particular community who
switch
look at
tax
the flaws. Yeah, who look at the flaws like that and point it out. And yeah, we gripe about it, but in general, we still love Nintendo. If we didn't love Nintendo, we wouldn't be doing this. We sure as hell wouldn't be collecting for the Switch the way that we collect right now. However, it hasn't all been rosy for them. As much as people like to put on their nostalgia glasses and look at things like the 64 or the GameCube, those were dark times for Nintendo. Those did not sell well compared to their competition. They are much smaller numbers than the success of the NES, the SNES, the Wii, and right now, I'll lump the Switch into that. The Switch has been so far a pretty damn good success. It already outsold the Wii U in year one. So, you know, let's not just call this, you know, off all of a sudden here. That this is fine. This is just Nintendo doing Nintendo things, and, you know, give it some more time. They're trying a lot of neat stuff right now. We're going to have in the fall, we're going to have their online service come up, and we still don't know all the details about what that's going to be. They've given us only a taste of that. I expect at some point we'll get some more Labo, which might be interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the next direct will probably have a lot about their online. I think it'll be before the online service, because they have to explain everything that's going on. So the main focus of the next direct's probably going to be that.
And at some point here, I would imagine we will get, and it might be paired up with the online services, we're probably going to get a big OS update for the Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, the current OS feels very bare bones, especially when you come from other platforms. It does what it does decently well, but there's a lot of features that are just locked out that will probably become available, especially when the online service goes live.
Yeah. Again, you know, not doom and gloom. Nintendo's not, you know, going out of business. They're not going out of style anytime soon.
They'll be around.
Yeah, they definitely will. We got a couple of questions. First one via Twitter. This person's also in our Discord, MBD. What do you recommend for protecting your purchases? I've been thinking about resealable cellophane bags for the plastic cases and acid-free PET plastic for the cardboard special editions. What do you do for your rare releases? I'll pick this one up first and then I'll pass it to you. I found this to be an interesting question. I could see very much where some people want to enclose some of their games, keep them free from the elements, but it's never been something that I personally have done. I'm not necessarily in this for an investment. If I was, I wouldn't approach my collection this way. And I don't make any bones about my spending habits towards this. But that being said, I find the prospect of potentially doing that very attractive. I've been considering it just because I think I want to maybe protect what I have. When I looked at that, I found that Retro Protection makes some very high quality acid-free PET plastic box protectors, and they're relatively cheap. You can buy a pack of 50 of them for $32.50.
I'm actually holding the business card from Retro Protection in my hand right now.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a great possibility. Now, there's also the route that MBD suggests with bags, and as a comic collector, I very much appreciate the idea of that as well, and it would much likely be a cheaper option in bulk, but I don't think it would display as nicely.
It also wouldn't protect long term either, especially if you play your games a lot. Now, if your game's sealed, that's a different thing. But if you're trying to protect your open games, putting it in a resealable cellophane bag, eventually it's going to wear out and scuff and stuff when you are using it to when you're opening it up to play the game again. So you
could go the route that I'm doing, where I'm keeping the games completely separate from the cases.
Yeah, and then just protect the case. That's fine, but I mean, at that point, I don't know that cellophane. Most people probably wouldn't be displaying at that point. I don't think.
Well, I guess the way that I'm thinking of it is that I would probably personally go with the Retro Protection boxes over the cases, keeping my games themselves separated out the way that I do. You know, they are protected in the little box that I have them in, maybe more so than most people's games. But the cases could be, kept from dust, could be kept from age. That could be an option for me. I'm actually considering it. I might go the route of like every great once in a while picking up a pack of the 50 until I'm caught up on that and just start boxing them up.
Yeah. You could do that. I know that to get into my answer to the question, I would probably go with Retro Protection. I have a few games that I currently keep in a Retro Protection case. Like when I got my Super Famicom game complete in box, I went ahead and ordered one Super Famicom protector and a 10 pack of the Switch protectors, and it came out to $11.35 after tax and shipping.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, so I got 11 cases for $11 basically, and the price actually came out to be like $7.85. It was an additional $3.50 for shipping and handling. So it was basically $1 a sleeve if you include shipping and handling into the total cost. And they came super quick. And I've got some games in them now. Obviously, I bought it mainly for the Super Famicom because that's a cardboard box and it's a complete inset, so I want to keep it protected. But as far as the Switch stuff goes, I've put in some of the games that I've left sealed in the Retro Protection. They display really well, so it protects them really well. I've got the Musinks release that is currently hard to find. I've got it in one of those just to make sure nothing out of the ordinary happens to it. I've got my Thimbleweed Park and my 2 super rare game releases in there, just because those are limited quantity stuff. But the thing about retro protection is I don't know, the flaps may wear out with constant opening and closing, but I feel like they're easier to display. They line up together really well, and getting them in and out isn't hard. So it's just the way, if I want to play one of those games, I can just pull it out of the case and then reuse the case. I don't have to worry about it. Whereas if I was using a bag, I may tear the bag or rip the bag. The adhesive, if I'm using an adhesive version, may wear out. As a comic book collector in the past, I had plenty of bags that protected my comics, and those bags would get scuffed and wear out. They protected the comic all right, but I would read a comic maybe once or twice, the same comic, in like a year. So I wasn't constantly opening and closing them like I do my games.
Well, with the comics, you also had the additional backing board, and the trick that we used to use is take the flap of the bag and tuck it over the comic and then slide the backing board in, so you didn't even have to use any adhesive. So it was easy to completely protect the book without messing up the bag. But at the same time, I just don't think they'll display that well. I think if you want to have your games out, a bag is maybe not going to be the nicest way to go. And I really, really like these boxes. So I may be heading that direction, which is something sort of unexpected. But great question, MBD.
The only thing that I would not be on board with, and it's just a personal preference because there's people who do this, I'm not on board with slabbing, which is when you send your game off to be quote unquote graded and they put it in a sealed hard plastic case. That's for video games. That's a little bit too far for me. If you want to do it, that's fine. I'm not gonna.
But we don't have anything here. We don't have anything in our collections that require grading at this point.
No, but there's people who grade everything they get just to keep it in a slab, and I can't get behind that, especially for the Switch. But video games in general, it's fine if you want to do it by all means. But slabbing to me is kind of reserved for stuff like comic books.
Yeah, something that potentially can have some very extreme value. And in video gaming, even the most extreme values are either exceedingly rare or there just aren't that many. You know, there's just not that many games that have that need, that requirement.
You can have a rated Tim Chin Mint stadium events slabbed. And I would still rather have a 6.8 X-Men #1, Uncanny X-Men #1. That's just...
I kind of agree.
Yeah.
I kind of agree. The other question from Lurkin Learner on the Discord, and I'm going to let you answer first. First off, this is a two-parter.
Yeah.
Pancakes or waffles? And then following that up, if you can only put one topping on your above choice, what topping?
Okay, so I'm more of a waffle person. I like pancakes, but I'm more of a waffle person. And currently my go-to topping for waffles is peanut butter. And if I couldn't have syrup on it, peanut butter is the more obvious choice still, because I could put peanut butter on it and then put a second waffle on top and make a peanut butter sandwich. So that would be great. So I'm probably going to go with that. I would say waffles and peanut butter are going to be my choices.
Now I'll say right off the bat, you are my people, because I'm definitely a waffle person over pancakes. But it's not to say that I don't like pancakes. It's just that waffles are a special, they hold a special place. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as single topping, because that was the hardest part of this question, was the restriction, because if I just go with syrup, boy, that's limiting. And a good maple syrup is hard to beat, but I'd probably go with strawberry topping. I'd go a little bit more traditional and say waffles with strawberry topping.
But, okay, so here's the thing though. What if you had strawberry waffles?
But that's not the question.
No,
it just says pancakes or waffles.
And if you can choose waffles, but who's to say that my waffle wasn't cooked with blueberries or chocolate chips or strawberries in the waffle?
And I will tell you right now that additional strawberry topping on top of that is perfectly fine and would work just as well.
I feel like at that point though, you start entering into the realm of whipped topping being a contender. If you already have the fruit,
yeah.
If you already have the fruit,
it's definitely a potential.
It's there.
Yeah. Now is this an Eggo or is this a Belgian waffle? What direction of waffle are we headed here?
I feel like ease of access, you could go with Eggo, but the question wasn't limiting us to a specific type of waffle, so you can have Belgian or potato or Eggo, however you want to do it. Obviously, a big, thick Belgian waffle is gonna be the way to go, but
I agree. I just wanted to be kind of clear on that. Now, next time when we pose for questions like that, you need to be more specific if you want a better answer than this. That's all I'm going to say.
If you give me a loophole, I'm going to find it. And speaking of plugging holes in logic here, we can talk about the games that we're currently playing. And I recently finished, basically forced myself to finish Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And I did that for a very specific reason. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I played on the regular mode, so I had Donkey as opposed to Funky Kong because I wanted to see how hard the game was because it was considered one of the hardest games on the Wii U. And I was so ragingly angry at that game that by the end of it, I just wanted it to be over. Like, I stopped trying to find all the additional stuff. I stopped trying to find the secondary exits to unlock more levels. I was just like, get me the hell out of here. I have to get done. And I did. I did beat the game as Donkey Kong. So I've got that check mark that I can give myself, but
and you never have to play it again.
I never have to play it again. No, but I had to get it done because we had new games coming out that I wanted to jump into. So
that's not to say that it's a bad game.
Oh no, it's a great game. It's just rage inducing. Like there was some parts where it's just like, why?
How about the minecart levels?
I didn't have a problem with the minecart levels. I had a problem with the underwater levels mostly.
Oh yeah, those are annoying.
Because the ability to turn around quickly and change directions before you run into something that hurts you was just god awful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now I will say that I played both modes a bit, just to make sure that I could see the difference and feel the difference between the two. And yeah, Funky Kong makes that game so much easier, like a magnitudinal order easier. His ability to multi-jump, you get all the health. It's like playing a different game. I was playing SteamWorld Dig 2. I kind of needed another fix after I finished playing Yoku's Island. I wanted more Metroidvania because Yoku's Island was great, and at some point I plan on going back to 100% that, but I really wanted a change of pace in the sense I wanted to play more new, but I didn't want to change genres, and that seemed like a really good game that I could probably finish before Octopath Traveler came out. And so my goal was to pick that up, play through that, and really enjoy that. And it was super fun. My only beef is I want the third one now, because the ending to this, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but the ending to this is so cliffhangery in a sense that if they don't do the third one, if they don't come out with the third one, I may have to find where these developers are and like hold them to a computer and say, code it now.
Just call them up and ask them, how are you going to end this series?
And why don't I already have that on my Switch? Why is this not already a thing? Hey, maybe it'll be in a future direct.
Maybe. So you were looking for a stopgap to fill time between Yoku's Island Express and Octopath, and I was looking to torture myself between Mario Tennis Aces and Octopath Traveler. And
okay, before you switch then, because we we've both played some Mario Tennis Aces here. The one player mode.
Yep.
What did you just tell me what you think about that? Because you know what's coming out of my mouth in a moment.
I liked the direction they were taking it. But there were some parts you could cheese really easy, but there were some enemies that were just pointlessly hard for no reason.
Kamek.
Like Boom Boom.
Kamek. And Boom Boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two were absolutely ridiculous. You talk about difficulty spike. That was a difficulty spike that was very obvious to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the mini games too. Some of those, like there was one or two you could cheese, but like the ones where you had to get a certain amount of points by reflecting the balls off of the barriers, and you had to hit a star barrier to get star power, and it was just, I don't know, some of the scores that it required you to get up to just felt unnecessarily high.
Well, yeah, I think the last one of that required you to get like 800 points.
Yeah, it was,
which is crazy.
Yeah. So, but and then of course that's also how they locked away your additional rackets and stuff like that. I did get the fire racket without too much problem, but I just, man, I don't know. Some of the boss mechanics are really good. Like I liked the mirror. I thought the mirror boss was really good.
Yeah. Well, but I think I was more disappointed with the repetition in the game. You end up having 3 masked matches, 3 of those ones where you hit the different nets or whatever you're talking about there. You had 3 of the ones where you had to hit enemies that were sitting in different positions. Mix it up a little. Give us more than that. This is a game that could have been so much more. It just didn't feel like it was done. I sort of agree with what a lot of the community online has said about the end result of the game after playing it. It wasn't worth retail. It wasn't worth, to me, what we ended up having to pay.
Yeah, a lot of that stems from the fact that when you're playing online with like a friend and stuff, you can't change the requirements of the game. So like
that's another piece.
Yeah,
of
you
it.
can't you can't play like X amount of sets, and it's just you can't play an actual game of tennis is basically what the complaint was.
Yeah, I would say in the end, if I had to grade the Mario Tennis release, I would give it maybe a C.
Yeah, I was thinking like C+.
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I mean, and you know me, I was talking about going pro and everything. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing. What's not disappointing is what I've seen and played so far on Octopath Traveler.
Oh man, I
am loving it.
Is phenomenal. We're both roughly the same amount into the game, but we've seen different things to each other. So that's kind of, because I started with a different character than you did, and actually
I started with Ophelia, and you started with
Therion.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that I went from Therion to the Hunter, which you don't have either of them, and you are past Cyrus onto the next 2 after Cyrus, and I haven't gotten them yet.
Right. So there are probably 3 or 4 things just right out of the gate that I can say about the game. First is the easy one. Visually stunning. Just absolutely beautiful. I've posted some screenshots that I've taken. I posted them in the Discord of a few moments in the game where I was just kind of blown away by the visuals. And when you freeze the frame for a picture of some of these, because you can, when you're on maps, you can hit the right shoulder and remove the mini map in the corner, which makes the screen pretty much just the background and the characters. That's all you've got on screen. And so you can make some really, really gorgeous screenshots. And as I said, the depth of field, the lighting effects on this, the way that they have mapped the textures, these 16-bit textures, is just absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous. The snow glistening.
Yeah, the random twinkles.
Birds flying. Yeah. I mean, just some amazing looks. And it really makes it so that when you freeze frame it, the backgrounds look like paintings. The foregrounds blur out, and it just focuses you on this center part of the picture. And that's just the visuals. All of that is just about the visuals. I think anybody that's saying anything like, oh gosh, who wants to, play a game with these 16-bit textures nowadays? They don't know what they're missing. Yeah. They really don't.
And some parts of it are voice acted fully, and some parts have like a snippet of a sound, and then you have to read the rest. So that's interesting. But that does lead me into the one thing that I am not enjoying currently, and it's not going to change. That this isn't going to get quote unquote better, and that is there is a lot of talking. But I understand they're telling a story, so I understand the point of it, and it's not taking away from my enjoyment of the game at all. But there's sometimes it's just like, okay, so this conversation has ran its course. Let me go kill stuff now, please.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I said in the Discord almost the exact same thing you did. There's a lot of exposition. It's way too much.
But I mean, that's the whole point. The whole game is basically character development.
It is, but I'd like to see more do and less talk. Yeah. I'd like to be able to play some of that rather than listen to it.
But to be fair, though, when you're going through collecting the characters, you're just doing the intro chapters. So maybe the later chapters, there's less talking. Because, like, I can do Therion's chapter 2 now, but I'm still going around collecting all the other characters. So I don't know what later chapters do. But obviously, the initial chapters are going to have the development because you have to learn the backstory of your character, and
you're going to have it 8 times.
Yeah. So and the neat thing about it too, when you collect a new character after your initial one, it gives you the option of, do you want to hear their story? So that's kind of neat.
I do, because it's the first time I've gone through it. So I'm definitely playing through it.
Yeah, I've played through their opening storyline, where it goes back like sometimes like a year, or sometimes like a few days or whatever, and you can see what led up to the point at which you then meet them. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the second thing I was thinking of, aside from the visuals, in my head, was that immediately caught my attention was the music. The music for this game is wonderful.
Yeah, but that's Square doing Square things. Like Square Enix has, and Squaresoft before them, when it comes to their RPGs, their soundtracks are pretty much masterpieces, like 9 out of 10 times.
Oh yeah, this feels like it should be, me sitting on a lawn listening to an orchestra play these tracks. They're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. The other piece that I really, really enjoyed with this, aside from visual and audio, was the battle mechanic, where you're kind of, in some ways, it sort of reminds me of Battle Chasers in these, you're stacking these charges up,
boost,
so that you can boost. It's kind of like the burst meter in a sense, or a way to play differently than before, but it adds a nice little element, because when you're playing against some of these bosses, and I don't want to give too much away here, but as you're going through the stories and you encounter the tougher enemies, there are times at which timing the use of that is to your great advantage, because of its capacity to interrupt things.
Yeah. Especially if you have a character that attacks with one of their weaknesses, and you can break down their defense. You can time your charges really well. I was finding myself, an enemy would buff themselves, and it would say they look physically stronger or whatever on the screen, and then I would use 2 or 3 of my boosts to immediately stun them, and that took them out of that. And so it's definitely a good feature, a really, really fun feature to play around with.
Yeah, the thing that I can probably say overall, just in my experience with the game to this point, is I sort of feel like Squaresoft and Nintendo never broke up.
Oh, definitely. This brings back very fond memories.
Doesn't it feel like like you just came out of Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG, and like this was a couple of years later plus. I mean, you know, it's just kind of like right there. This is where we were back then, but so much more.
Yes, most definitely.
So I really should be getting back to playing Octopath Traveler. I keep spending all of my time working on the podcast.
I thought you were playing Captain Toad.
You weren't supposed to tell everybody that.
I suppose that'll do for this month. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Yada yada yada. It really helps us out. Yada yada yada.
Hey, remind me that we need to work on this sign-off thing. This is Soul.
And this is Cyrix saying, see you next time. Man, we don't need to work on anything. I've got this down. I'm good. I'm good.